Dude, have you ever heard of Mothman? No? So tune in, because this story is bizarre. Imagine you're having a good time in a quiet little town, and suddenly reports begin to appear of a giant creature, with moth wings and glowing red eyes, that looks like it came out of a low-budget horror film. The people of Point Pleasant, in West Virginia, swore that this creature was hanging around the city. And of course, as if all this bizarreness wasn't enough, after a while a disaster happened that only added fuel to the fire. Want to know more? Get ready, this story is incredible. So, the parade started back in 1966. Point Pleasant, a blink-and-you'll-go-it-alone little town, was fine until some people started reporting some weird things. They said they saw a giant animal, half man, half moth, with red eyes that looked like a truck's flashlight in the dark. Now think about it with me. You're in the middle of the street at night, having fun, and suddenly a giant moth almost 2 meters tall appears staring at you? What do? Run, right? The crowd was terrified, but at the same time, intrigued. Reports began to appear from people who swore up and down that they had seen this Mothman. That was the nickname they gave the creature. No one knew where he came from, if he was an alien, a mutant, or just nature trolling everyone. It got so serious that even the newspapers started talking about it. You know how it is, good news doesn't make news, but a sinister humanoid moth, that sells newspapers. The worst thing is that the animal seemed to have a specific taste for scaring drivers. Many reports came from people who were driving calmly, when out of nowhere he appeared flying behind their car. If it's silly, Mothman was just hanging out and people thought it was persecution. But, of course, no one wants to believe that they were being followed by a giant insect by chance, right? And so, the legend of Mothman began to fly, literally. Now, let's move on to the tense moment in the story. Mothman already had a reputation as a caparotesque moth that appears to scare people, and then December 1967 arrived. People were still talking about the creature's appearances, when boom, the Silver Bridge collapsed out of nowhere. That bridge connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, and out of nowhere, it collapsed into the Ohio River, taking the lives of 46 people. Tragic, right? But then people started to make some kind of, let's say, creative connections. There were people who swore they saw Mothman flying over the bridge days before it fell. Coincidence? Of course. After all, if a bizarre creature with giant wings and lighthouse eyes appears in your city, something will go wrong, right? At least that's what people started to believe. The bridge collapsed and presto, Mothman became not only a flying nightmare, but also the messenger of the apocalypse. If the dog barked for nothing or the milk went sour, he was to blame. In fact, there were people who already thought he was like a prophet of the end of the world or something like that. And look, it wasn't just the bridge. After all this happened, stories emerged of people seeing Mothman in other places where tragedies had occurred, such as Chernobyl and even September 11th. But, let's face it, it's easy to say you saw the animal after it's already gone bad, right? Whether he was really there or whether it was just people blaming poor Mothman, we'll never know. But the fact is that, after this disaster, his reputation was once again tied to chaos and destruction. The guy practically became the official spokesman for the tragedies. But first, I need to ask you, are you enjoying it? Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos and leave a like. Now the craziest part, Mothman, after causing all this commotion, disappeared. Like, out of nowhere. He no longer appeared to scare anyone, and people began to wonder, was he just passing through? Did he go somewhere else? Or who knows, was it just in our heads? Be that as it may, his legend remained. But man, Point Pleasant is not stupid, no. The people of the small town saw a golden opportunity in this whole story. They thought, since Mothman had everyone shaking at the base, why not turn it into a big event? And that's how the Mothman Festival was born. Every year, there is a party to celebrate the animal. Seriously, it's like the carnival of conspiracy theories, complete with people dressed up as Mothman, food trucks, talks about UFOs and a let's celebrate terror vibe because, after all, it got the media, right? Oh, and there's also a gigantic statue of Mothman right in the center of the city. Of course, because nothing says welcome like a giant steel moth with eyes brighter than motel neon. These days, Point Pleasant is basically the official sanctuary for fans of unexplained mysteries and bizarre theories. Mothman became something of a local and even international celebrity. There's a documentary, a book, a t-shirt, an action figure, and who knows what else. It's like the Mickey Mouse of the horror world. Whether it was real or not doesn't even matter anymore. The city embraced the legend, and Mothman became eternal, at least as long as people are buying tickets to the festival and taking selfies with the statue. And of course, if you're lucky, you might even find one or two guys dressed as Mothman out there, just to give you that basic scare. So to sum up all this madness, Mothman, who started out as a bizarre creature haunting a small lost town in the USA, ended up becoming a legend that is never forgotten. The animal, which could very well have remained just a nightmare of someone who ate too much before going to sleep, became a pop culture icon and a goldmine for the people of Point Pleasant. From car chases to the collapsing bridge, Mothman managed to leave everyone a little paranoid and at the same time, fascinated. And of course, at the end of the day, the most important thing isn't even knowing whether he was real or not. What matters is that he left his mark, or was it his shadow, on history, transforming tragedies into horror stories that continue to be told to this day. And if you're lucky enough to visit Point Pleasant, you can even buy a Mothman t-shirt to brag about being chased by a giant moth. Now that's a respectful ending to a legend as strange as it is fascinating. So it's there, right? Mothman may be gone, but his stories keep flying. Who knows, maybe one of these days he won't show up again to say hi. You'll know. So that's today's video. I hope you liked it. See you in the next story.